Hey everyone, I'm Eric. So today, we're going to dive into something that, let's be honest, can happen to absolutely anyone: getting scammed. We like to think it only happens to people who are maybe a bit greedy or not paying attention. But the truth is, it has way more to do with how our brains are wired. To prove it, let's unpack the insane story of how a brilliant physics professor ended up paying a fake tax bill with gift cards.
Okay, so picture this. The year is 2010. A physics professor, Mark Templeton, gets a phone call. On the other end, a very serious voice says they're from the IRS. They tell him he owes a bunch of back taxes, and if he doesn't pay up, like right now, he's going to be arrested. For hours, they keep him on the phone, just bombarding him with legal-sounding jargon, threats, total chaos. The result, this incredibly smart, logical guy ends up in a retail store, buying thousands of dollars in gift cards and reading the numbers out over the phone. Sounds crazy, right? So how on earth does that happen?
It just sounds impossible. A physics professor. But his story is the perfect proof that being smart is not a defense. So the real question becomes, how do they pull it off? Well, to figure that out, we've got to look in two places. First, the scammer's playbook, and second, the blind spots that are literally hardwired into our own brains.
All right, so first up, the scammer's playbook. You might think scams are always changing with new tech and all that, but what's wild is that they're pretty much all based on 4 core scripts. These are ancient tricks that have worked for centuries because they target these timeless quirks in how we all think.
So these are the 4 pillars of a successful scam. And they're so effective because they don't really attack our weaknesses. No, they weaponize the very mental shortcuts our brain uses every single day just to get by. Let's break them down one by one.
The first weapon in their arsenal is something called our truth default. Basically, our brains are wired to believe things first and then ask questions later. It's really just an efficiency hack for our minds. Can you imagine questioning every single thing you read or heard all day? You'd never get anything done. Scammers know this. When they call you, our default reaction isn't suspicion, it's actually curiosity. And that's all the opening they need.
Next up, they basically become magicians. You know that famous invisible gorilla experiment? It shows our attention is like a spotlight. So scammers intentionally overload that spotlight. They'll throw complex charts at you, use a ton of impressive jargon, or just talk really, really fast. And while you're busy trying to make sense of all that noise, you completely miss what's actually happening. The fact that there's no real evidence, or the crazy exit clauses in the fine print.
You see, our memory isn't like a video recorder. It's more like a storyteller. It remembers the gist of what happened, not every tiny detail. Scammers exploit this by creating a really powerful story. The brilliant startup that's going to change the world, or the urgent charity case. We get so caught up in the story that we just gloss over the details that don't quite add up. Because when a story feels right, our brain tends to ignore the facts that prove it wrong.
And finally, they lay the consistency trap. Look, no scammer asks for 50 grand on the first call. It always starts small. Hey, just join our free webinar. Then, maybe it's a tiny commitment, like a $100 trial investment. And when they actually send you back $120, your brain doesn't see a trap. It sees proof that you made a smart decision. So later, when they ask for the big money, saying no feels, well, inconsistent. You've already been successful with them. You're hooked.
Okay, so that's the scammer's playbook. But it only works because of the other side of the coin. Our brain's own built-in blind spots. It's not just about their tricks. It's about the, let's call them bugs in our own mental operating system.
Let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself for a sec. On a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is I'd fall for anything, and 10 is I'm a human lie detector, where would you put yourself? I'm guessing most of us would say, what, a 7 or an 8? Maybe a 9? Well, that feeling, right there, that's actually the first blind spot.
This is what psychologists call the better-than-average effect. Study after study shows that something like 85% of us believe we're better than average at spotting scams, which of course is statistically impossible. This overconfidence is a scammer's absolute best friend. It makes us relax our guard because we think, that stuff only happens to other people. Scammers are masters at bypassing our slow, logical brain and talking directly to our fast, emotional one. They use this powerful cocktail of fear, greed, and sympathy. The fear of getting arrested makes us panic. The promise of easy money triggers our greed. And a heartbreaking story about a sick kid, that activates our sympathy. When any of these emotions are running high, our rational thinking pretty much just shuts down.
Let's face it, we live in a complex world, so we rely on shortcuts. We see a lab coat, we think doctor. We see an official-looking government seal, we think legitimate.
Scammers know this, so they create fake symbols of authority. A really professional-looking website, a fancy job title, maybe even a rented office in a nice building. These symbols make us suspend our disbelief and just comply, because questioning authority, it feels uncomfortable.
All right, we've gone through the problem from both sides of the table. Now for the most important part, the solution. How do we actually build a mental firewall to protect ourselves from this stuff? Here are 4 concrete strategies you can use.
So the single most important change is your default mindset. You know that old saying, trust but verify? It's outdated. It's not good enough anymore. The new rule, especially when the stakes are high, has to be don't trust, just verify. What this means is that verification isn't something you do after you decide to trust someone. Verification is the precondition for trust. Until you have independent proof, you treat every claim as just a theory.
Scammers always want you to act now. Urgency is their fuel. So your best defense is to deliberately slow things down. I call this injecting friction. When you're faced with a high-pressure situation, give yourself a mandatory 24-hour cool-down period. No exceptions. And during that time, talk it over with a trusted friend or family member. Honestly, the simple act of explaining the situation out loud to someone else often makes you realize how ridiculous it sounds. This gives your rational brain time to get back in the driver's seat.
To fight back against fake authority, you need to find a real consensus. Don't just rely on the evidence the salesperson gives you. Of course, that stuff looks good. It's hand-picked. You have to do your own research. Check multiple, independent, and reputable sources. If some financial advisor is pitching you a secret investment, see what places like the Wall Street Journal or Bloomberg are saying about it. If no one else is talking about it, that is a massive red flag.
And the final strategy is really the foundation for all the others. Embrace humility. Remember this quote from the physicist Richard Feynman. We have to accept that anyone, and I mean anyone, can be fooled. When you acknowledge your own vulnerability, you're way more likely to actually use these other strategies. It's not a sign of weakness, it's probably the ultimate sign of wisdom.
Okay, let's pull all of this together. We've looked at the tactics, the psychology behind them, and the defenses we can build. But mastering this stuff isn't just about protecting your bank account. It's really about a fundamental upgrade to your entire way of thinking.
So here it is, your anti-scam cheat sheet. For every tactic they throw at you, there is a direct countermove you can make. They exploit your truth default, you don't trust, you verify. They try to manipulate your focus, you inject friction and slow it down. Think of this as your new mental software update. It's pretty handy. But you know, at the end of the day, learning these skills isn't just about avoiding bad guys. It's a fundamental upgrade in how you process information. It's about critical thinking. It's about emotional regulation. And it's about making better decisions in your career, with your health, even in how you consume the news every day.
So, I'll leave you with this final thought. We update the software on our phones and our computers all the time to protect against new threats, right? It's automatic. But when was the last time you consciously and deliberately updated the way you think?
I'm Eric. If you found this helpful, please give us a like, subscribe, and share. It really helps the channel out. Also, if there's a book or a topic you'd like us to break down next, let us know in the comments below.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay sharp out there, and we'll see you in the next one.